Welcome back to Inside City Hall. As we reported earlier, the city's Department of Correction has a new commissioner. It's Stanley Richards, a former Rikers Island detainee himself. In many ways, Richards will not be running the city's jail system, however, because a federal judge last month appointed what is called a remedial manager to oversee Rikers. So with this divided leadership, what will it be like to be behind bars at Rikers, either as a detainee or indeed as a corrections officer or a civilian staff member? Here to share his thoughts about the new order of things and the new commissioner and the state of the city's jails is the president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association. It's Boscio. Welcome to the program. Great, very good to see you.
Good to see you too, Errol. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Now, the titles that are in your union, is it all of the correction staff, or is it most of them?
All New York City correction officers.
All New York City correction
COBA
officers.
Represents all New York City correction.
And about how many members in your union?
We have about 5,200 active members and about 10,000 retirees.
Got it. So actually, before I ask you about the new commissioner, how do you feel about this remedial manager, basically a receiver? The system has been put into receivership in effect that's going to answer to a federal judge. Have you met Mr. Demmel? Do you have a kind of sense of what's going to be happening?
I have not met Mr. Demmel yet. We were told he was on Rikers today, visiting one of the facilities. Looking forward to meeting with him. You know, as you know, we're dealing with federal monitor, now remediation manager, new commissioner. So we've been going through a lot of things,
yes.
To say the least. But, we know he came from Vermont. I think he did about 4 years. He's a correction manager. So we're hoping that he brings, new insight to what we've been dealing with, the terrible conditions we're in.
Okay. Stanley Richards, we asked him. I know you've dealt with him before because he was, I guess, the number 2 in the department for a number of months towards the end of the de Blasio administration. Anyway, we asked him for his thoughts about the union. Here's what he had to say.
I want them at the table. I want them helping us shape the strategies, because I don't think our end goal is different. They want officers to be safe, so do I.
How would you describe your relationship with the union when you were there previously in 2021?
I think, as you said, it was very rocky. We had significant officers out sick. Officers were doing doubles and triples. It was a really scary time. And I don't think the unions were brought in to the strategies, and so they felt isolated and unappreciated.
As I look back at a very tough time in the history of the department, what's your sense of whether or not you'll be able to work with the new commissioner?
I mean, look, Errol, at the end of the day, we'll work with anybody. I understand his past. In the 80s, he was a former inmate. I'm not really concerned about his past. Not as much as his tenure as first deputy commissioner when he was here, for 6 months or so. My members got scapegoated. When him and the former commissioner, Schiraldi, came into office, we were basically blamed for feigning illness, which was just not the case. We were in the epicenter of COVID. We had members dealing with long COVID, right, out sick. And to, basically say we're out there feigning illness was, terrible. And it kind of set us on the wrong foot, and that was really the concern, is you're blaming our members. I mean, we even had to go to state legislature to get legislation passed that you can't penalize anybody that is out sick for COVID. And the governor signed that bill, but blaming us out the gate we thought was problematic. And he was right when he said that we were not at the table. So many policies are implemented. We have so much bureaucracy, federal monitor, the Board of Corrections. Now, we've been through 5 commissioners, Errol. 5 commissioners since I became president in 2020. And the boots on the ground seem to not be able to do anything right in the monitor's 20 reports that he's put out against us. And the reality, the monitor's made a lot of money off the taxpayers in New York City, in essence of $30–40 million, we estimate. And why would we ever be in compliance with what the monitor wants? Because it's just a cash cow, as we feel scapegoated, and that's the problem that we feel.
Okay, so we now are entering a new era with the new commissioner, as well as this remediation manager, receiver in effect. What do you hope to see come out of this? If you could sort of put your wish list in front of these gentlemen, what will things look like, say, a year or 2 from now?
Staffing levels would be up because we're down 40% since 2019. We had about 9,000 and change officers, down to 5,200. A seat at the table to really bring forth ideas to us, right? We know what works and what doesn't work. I've been 27 years as a correction officer. My members are the boots on the ground and know firsthand on what is going to work and what is not going to work. And we should brainstorm on these ideas collectively. That is my goal, get staffing level up so that my members have a quality of life. I mean, Errol, I have officers working 150 hours a month of overtime. We were doing 24-hour shifts. And we were getting blamed for everything that people feel is wrong with the criminal justice system.
But explain that. This is something I've been wondering about for a while, because I look at some of the reports when they come in. 5,200 officers, even if you divided it by 3 for shifts, with a total inmate count of what, about 8,000 or so? 7,000?
7,000 now.
Yeah,
correct. But not everybody's at work at the same time. You got vacation picks, you got academy.
But it's still a very high ratio compared to other systems, right?
I mean, listen. I don't know how the other systems have like indirect supervision. We have direct supervision. We need officers on the floor. When you're dealing in a housing area with 50 inmates and they're all gang affiliated, it puts a lot of pressure on us. Overworked. I mean, Errol, we don't live in a third world country. You could argue that this is the richest city in America. They let Rikers fall apart and it's the correction officers' fault. Like, we're not in charge of infrastructure, fix the cells. Obviously, we're not getting off the island in 2027, right? So fix the cells so that everybody can be safe. I mean, my members have had to endure close to 700 assaults on them in 2025. Almost 30.
It's 2 a day every day.
Yeah, almost 30 sexual assaults. And the interesting thing that I got about Stanley Richards, when he first, spoke, he said, my message to staff about transparency and accountability. Well, listen, he should recognize now that he's not the leader of the Fortune Society, inmate advocacy group. Now he's the leader of the 2nd largest uniform force in the city of New York, and we need help. The reality is that transparency and accountability goes both ways. When you talk about accountability, it can't be only accountability for my members, the correction officers. Where's the accountability for those 700 assaults on my members? Should there not be any accountability for those actions?
This is something you and I have talked about. I mean, it's to an extent, I try and remind my viewers of this whenever the opportunity comes up, but that something happens every single day, that there are assaults on your members, the people who are throwing feces or throwing urine or a physical attack of some kind. And what was supposed to happen is that technically, because Rikers is part of the Bronx DA is supposed to have people there to basically arrest and charge people on the spot. Is that not happening? I
mean, they get rearrested, but their crimes in jail run concurrent with what they're inside for, with their street crimes. So they know that they're not going to be added consequences, and this is our biggest problem. The lawmakers want to take away viable deterrents, consequences for those actions. A crime is a crime no matter where it's committed. Why should crimes in jail be treated differently than they are in the streets of New York? We are there to enforce the law, right? And they have to be accountable for those actions. Other than that, why would they change their behavior, Errol?
Understood. Well, this is going to be a 3-way conversation at least between you, the commissioner, and the new monitor. Please keep us up to date on it, and we wish the best of luck to you as we try and do what I think everybody wants, which is to try and keep the level of violence in the jails down.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Errol, for having me again.
Thank you.